From a college dropout to living in a hacker house in San Francisco to founding what he calls the Costco of go-to-market SaaS, my guest today, Nico Ferreyra, is going to share some of his insights on AI and how he is deploying it in his business to generate $200,000 to $300,000 per month. This is an episode that you do not want to miss, so buckle up. Let's get into it. Nico, welcome to the show, man. Thanks so much for being here.
Thanks, Jason, for having me. Excited to jam on all things go-to-market and AI and everything else we get into.
Yeah, man. I want to start out with your background because I think it's fascinating. I got some questions for you about it. But born in Argentina, raised in Kentucky. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Launched your first company while you were an undergrad in college.
Yes.
Then you decided to drop out of school a semester before you were done with your degree so that you could kind of go all in on the business side of things and moved to San Francisco and, shacked up in a hacker house, right? Do I have it pretty much correct?
Yeah, that's pretty much it. That's those are the high level points. Yeah.
Right. So what interested me, I read or listened to an interview that you had given earlier to a couple of tech guys in, I think, New York City. And one of the questions I had was, why not just finish out the last semester? It's like you said you only had a few credits left or something, and that way you just had it done instead of just throwing all that time and money away.
Yeah, I think, a lot of where my mind was at the time, there's a really interesting thing, a really interesting analogy that someone gave me like 2 or 3 years ago about, funny enough, like about gambling, and about it was specifically around like designing pricing models for software. So like me pulling this out of that is really interesting, but it's analogous and makes it sound sense to me. But when you're sort of like, when you're sort of like down on your luck at the like casino, I've never been to a casino, but so this is just hearsay. But there's this really interesting sort of like psychology, or kind of like psychological lever that happens a lot of times that, when someone's already down on your luck, like if I ask you like, Jason, I've got a coin here, right? I'll flip it. If it lands on heads, I'll give you $100. If it lands on tails, you walk away with nothing, but you have to buy in for like $20. Let's say you take the bet, right? It lands on tails, you lose your $20. And I tell you again, like, Jason, all right, you're already like $20 down for like 5xing your money. Do you want to double down and make like 200? Right? That was you would probably say yes. And there's like this really interesting like element of the psyche, that sort of like pops up a lot in folks. I think especially in like founders, and like you sort of see this, like you sort of see the same kind of like pattern of story. Like someone was like a high flying, they did a lot in school. They were like winning a lot of competitions. They were like at this like really successful company, and then they leave and they start like something else. Or like they were just, they were in a spot where they realized they just like didn't have all the leverage, or they weren't self-actualizing in the way they wanted to, which is very much my case, right? But it's still like very analogous to like the sort of casino thing of, I'm sitting there, I'm like taking heat transfer and like, grad level like thermo and a bunch of other stuff. And then at the same time, like running a software business, and like, I don't really want to do thermo at all. I don't care about heat transfer. It's, fascinating, but like, it's not what I want to spend the rest of my life doing. I sort of saw like in that moment, I'm like, man, there's like very little downside to just like going all in and doing the thing that I want to do, taking the leap and just like going to San Francisco and like living in a hacker house with a bunch of, cool guys I met on Twitter. So no, I'm being dead serious. Like that was pretty much it. There was no, I wish there was like a clever answer behind it, but like, in that moment in time, I was like studying mechanical engineering and physics, and, the downside of me like not doing that and like going back and like, doing another 10 credits or, worst, like absolute worst case, like move back in with my parents. It actually like wasn't that much lower than like where I perceived myself to be. And like a big part of this was like me sort of like discovering the existence of the hacker house concept, right? This is like pre me watching like Silicon Valley on HBO or anything like that. But there was this whole other world with like a ton of unknown upside that had opened itself up and revealed itself to me. And at that moment in my life, and like pretty much, every day since, it's been, I've thought about it a lot more, from the lens of like maximizing the upside of something, as opposed to like, capping my downside. Cause at the end of the day, the losses are negligible, on a long enough time scale.
What you're kind of talking about is sunken cost fallacy, right? It's that I've already devoted so much time to something and it's like, oh, I've already lost so much money. I used to be a professional currency trader for a number of years, and that was something that novice and professional traders all deal with, which is, hey, I've already lost X amount of dollars. I should just hold on and it'll come back. And just you have to know when to cut your losses. I have this terrible thing of starting something up, like starting something inside the business and growing it to, 20, 30, 50, $100,000 a month. And then just deciding I don't want to do that anymore and just shutting it off as a revenue stream. And so I understand the concept of looking across and saying, hey, this is worth a risk. And I think that when you're young, those are the time to really take those risks. When, like you said, you moved into a hacker house. So talk to me about that, because I know nothing about that, but the idea, like my version of that being 46 would be finding some people on Craigslist and just going over and shacking up with them. What does that look like? And what do you guys do in there all day?
I mean, it was really cool. It was a really cool experience. I think it was probably like the most formative life experience I've ever had outside of like the journey of self-discovery that is like starting and growing and, sticking with like a company. Right. It was really interesting. I mean, I moved into this house in San Francisco with these guys that I'd met on a Discord server / Clubhouse / Twitter during the pandemic. And it was a blast. I mean, I went from like living alone in, a townhouse in Kentucky to living in this, like, it was like a triple, like a 3-floor, like sweatshop in Nob Hill in San Francisco. It was amazing. And like the coolest thing
I was going to say, what do you guys do in there? Like, I mean, is it just a bunch of guys? Because I'm not a coder. I have no coding background, nothing like that. Is it just a bunch of guys sitting in a room just coming up with ideas and then helping each other develop product? What is it like?
No, it was there was a little bit more to it. It was essentially, everyone who was living there when I moved in had already started a company and was more or less in that like 0 to 1 kind of slog, where you're like trying to figure stuff out, you're like building the product, maybe you're like trying to raise money, etc. It was sort of like high school 2.0 or like college 2.0, right? You go in, it's like the best way to like figure out like how to act, like what actually goes into like starting and like running a company and like raising money and everything. Cause like everyone's sort of like in their room all day long at their standing desk or like, on their walking treadmill or whatever, taking these meetings, and you're sort of like walking down the hallway to like grab a drink of water. And like, this guy's talking about like, scaling his content engine or something. This guy's talking about like, hiring an engineer. This person's talking about like lining up a bunch of intros for their like next round, stuff like that. So around like 9 p.m., everyone would sort of emerge from their cave and, kind of go into the living room and, debrief, and like, information would very quickly just move around, right? Like what was like the day's like drama, what was the day's like problem, et cetera. And everyone was so, I think, eager for signal from one another that like the level of candor that you can have with someone when you're in an environment like that is like, it's very, very, it's very blunt. Like there's no, like people will just tell you like, hey, I think you're like messing up.
It sounds like an entrepreneur's dream. Like I can remember. I remember the first company that I built. We grew it very quickly. We just hit it at the right time, at the right market, and we ended up like in a year we were doing $1.5 million in sales. Yeah. And I was running into growth problems inside of that business, and I was trying to figure out what we needed to do to take next steps. And I realized really quickly that I don't know anybody who does what I do and who has addressed the problems that I'm trying to address. And I don't have anybody I can call. And it sounds like that to have a space where you could, I ended up spending like $30,000 a year to go to a mastermind group with a bunch of other people in my industry. But having that inside the house seems like a godsend, like the amount of data that flows back and forth and connections and everything.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's really cool. It was a very net positive, or like positive some kind of experience, and it's really cool, man. I mean, like, if you're like a young founder and you're sort of like, especially for me, it was the best kind of like support group I could have building a company, right? Like, apart from like just needing a very tight feedback loop to like learn fast. It was great because, like, I mean, the problems weren't unique, right? Like, I walk out in the living room and someone else had the same problem as me, like maybe like 6 months earlier, or was going through the same thing of like figuring out how to hire like a specific type of person or figuring out how to raise money, stuff like that. So it was really cool. I mean, people would come in and they would like grow really, really quickly.
Was everybody funded in the house, or how did you guys eat? How do you pay the bills?
Yeah, pretty much everybody was funded. So the thing that would typically happen is like you'd kind of come in like in the first like 6 to 12 months of like starting to work on something, and then the house would like being in the house would like your ability to like stay in the house was a like either because you left or for other reasons was basically like you figured it out. Like you being able to figure out, you either would like sell the company or you would like raise money and like keep going. So like, it was really cool. It was kind of very laissez-faire, but still like very positive thumbs. So like folks would come in within the first like year, I guess, of like starting to work on something. And then sometimes they would just full blown like pivot, and then the thing would like take off. And I like one of the classic stories that were these two guys, one of whom had just graduated from high school, another one had just graduated from college, who lived in the house together. They partnered up, started a company, worked on it for a year. Nothing really happened, and then they pivoted, and now it's valued at like $250 million or something. Something like that. So, and like everyone would invest in one another too, and like make investor intros and stuff like that. It was all just, everyone market making each other's like seed or series A or whatever. Yeah. It was really, really cool.
That is very cool. And were you building Default at that time?
Yeah.
Is that what you were building? Okay.
Yeah. And we were, go ahead.
I was just going to say, tell me a little bit about Default and what you guys do and what you've built.
Yeah. We started Default with the, idea that there was this really big platform to build in the sales and marketing space. Not, we didn't really think about it from the lens of like building like the next big like sales platform or the next big like marketing platform. We just thought that like there's a ton of information between like the information that a sales team relies on to work and operate. Right. Mm-hmm. And the information that a marketing team relies on to grow and operate and spend money and whatnot. And then like the actual like HR component of all this. Thought there was a really, really big platform to be built on top of all that information. And we the way we started was like we kind of had this like really big crazy idea. I think part of this was like being like the young founder in the room, where like all the other guys in the category are like, they're like 40, this is like their fourth company. They sold the last one to like Salesforce or something. And for us, like we were just like the young, like naive guys who just liked building stuff and had like a really big idea, a really big kind of like vision for like what we wanted to build. And then enough experience, like having like sold our own software and, stitching together different tools at other companies to know that like, oh, there's a lot of meat on the bones here. We had this really big idea that early on we called it kind of like building like the minimum viable bundle or the minimum viable platform, not the minimum viable product. So when we went out and like raised our seed round, my sort of like message to people was like, yeah, it's going to take us like quite a while to do this, but I think that if we're right, the outcome is very, very big, and if we're wrong, it's like the base case for like all of your other portfolio companies. So that seemed to resonate with people. We're now like 3 years deep and having a blast.
Now you've kind of described Default as the Costco of go-to-market SaaS, and I interpret that as being, hey, we're a one-stop shop for you guys.
Yeah.
for your go-to-market, which includes, your sales and marketing and all of that inside of go-to-market. And so one of the issues that I have found and that I notice companies struggle with is that when you try and bundle under one umbrella, under one tool, too many different components, software for different types of activities, you get one of two things happens. You either get bloat,
Yep.
or you get over complexity.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a question of, do I want to get a system that works, pretty good at all of these different things? Or do I want to get the best system for each tool, for each part of the business or the go-to-market strategy, and then try and find a way to connect them? Is that something that you guys considered when you were building? And like, what was your thought process around, hey, we don't want this? I'm assuming you didn't want to turn it into something like Salesforce, where it's just like, it's a monstrosity that it takes years to unpack.
Yeah. I think, we definitely thought about that a lot. And, as a multi-product company, we see like all the above, right? And I think like for us, we approached it kind of like from the fundamentals of like, building the sort of like fundamental idea of like building, a multi-product, offering. Or the big analogy I used to use like really early on was like streaming bundles. Like, you go into Amazon Prime, you've got like the HBO Max plus,
Yep.
I don't know, Discovery or your like Ancient Aliens, kind of bundle available to you. Right. And then, you as a consumer, you sort of like pick and choose which bundle you buy, or you just completely disregard the bundle and you pay the a la carte price for the streaming option, et cetera. Right. And like, what we really deeply believed was like bundling is going to be the way like you're going to have to build like a really big business in this category, right? If you're going to build a business in this category and you want it to, have a chance at getting above $100 million of like annual recurring revenue, at least, you can't be single product. So the question, you're not going to do it as a point solution. Like you have to build a platform really, really early. And like the issue with that.
Do you mean like you can't just be a CRM, or you can't just be an ads platform, that you've got to kind of incorporate multiple tools inside the same platform? What do you mean by that?
Yeah. So if you look at like the companies in this category that are not public, that were started in the last like 10 to 15 years and have grown the most, a lot of them actually started off as point solutions. They started off as like just doing sequencing or just doing call recording or like just doing forecasting, or like some derivative of those things. Right. And the issue though is that, competition is inevitable when you're in a category that is it's like mimetic, right? Like the issue with this category broadly is that one company starts to take off, gets really, really buzzy, and then everyone starts to like copy them, right? And you as a provider of the solution, that's a question you have to think about like really early on, is like, how do I build for like anti-competition, not like, just getting the first like 20 to 50 million of ARR and like raising my, B or C or whatever, and kind of going off. Because ultimately at the end of the day, like, if you start doing well, everyone's going to start to copy you. You may as well have like some advantage, right? And like the advantage, I think, the big question that I think that matters in the category of like building software products on like revenue centric data is, how do you build like the anti-competitive data model on revenue data? That's the question I think that matters. And like, that was the question that we kind of like started the company with, right? It's like, It is like, don't get me wrong, it's really, really hard to build a multi-product company. But yeah.
Okay, gang, quick break to tell you about our sponsor for the show, Motion. Listen, if your calendar resembles a Jackson Pollock painting and you find yourself constantly falling behind schedule, you need to try Motion. It's the AI-powered super app that rebuilds your workday in real time. Motion pulls every task, every project, every meeting into one place and then prioritizes and time blocks your calendar so that you always know exactly what to tackle next. It's kind of like having a project manager and a personal assistant and, an air traffic controller all rolled into one. And the results? Well, Teams tend to finish work twice as fast with 90% fewer check-ins, emails, and meetings, which, let's face it, it's something we can all afford to avoid. And because Motion predicts delays before they happen, you can course correct in days instead of hours before a deadline. Now, I've swapped my patchwork of calendars, task apps, and sticky notes for Motion, and I have never been happier. So click the link in the description to try Motion for free today and start turning chaos into calm. Now, back to the show. Well, you have said that, and I think I'm quoting you correctly here, that true traction comes from cold outbound sales and real customer demand. And I want to ask you a question that's highly relatable to what the business that you are in. And I've asked a couple of other guests on the show, because this is something that I think is going to be a very serious issue moving forward. Talk to me about the shift that you think AI is going to cause in the use of sort of outbound marketing versus paid inbound marketing. So as content you can continue to create. So I give an example of this. Today I built an N8N workflow with a few agents in it that will automatically go out and scrape the highest quality posts that you can find on any topic that you want. And then it will feed it in through and have it do some research and find more information about the topic that they were posting on, and then take all of that information, move it in, and create an entirely new post around it.
Yeah.
And it can rip hundreds of these a day and produce hundreds of pieces of content. And we're going to start to see those channels start to fill up, everything from video to audio to text, right? So what does that do to, say, your typical, you can do it in email too. You can custom format emails and blast 100,000 of them a day if you want to. How does that affect that process going forward if traction comes from cold outbound sales? How are you guys approaching that inside of your company?
Yeah, I think that if everyone can do like standard LinkedIn content, like the standard, like kind of, hook, written content, kind of like mini blog style, like LinkedIn content, then it will become the meme, right? Everyone will do it, right? Like the thing that you built today on N8N, right? Like there are tons of teams that are doing that too. And like even more that will do it now. I would actually say like, you all are probably like an early adopter if you're doing it right now. And when everyone starts to do that, or like, the agency economy that exists around like Clay, starts to emerge around like N8N for stuff like that, it's going to get really, really interesting, because the mean that you need, like the technical proficiency you need to like wrangle these tools to produce the baseline of performance is going to go up, right? It's like, if you think about like what companies are going to win, like let's say everyone starts doing that in the next 18 months, the companies that will like win or stand out like in inbound, they'll treat content production like a movie studio, right? They will do like they will produce killer videos, incredible podcast content, incredibly engaging, like very, very high bar content. And that will be their edge, right? They will, companies that are marketing led they'll look almost indistinguishable to like media companies. Yeah. After a certain point, right? On the outbound side, I think outbound is interesting because it's I spent a lot of time thinking about this as we're building out kind of our own engine here. Outbound feels like a really underrated, don't quote me on this, but outbound feels like a really underrated kind of channel for, I think like for us specifically in our business, like it feels like a really underrated channel that we should think about with product, not necessarily to feed like sales. It almost feels like an extension of like product marketing in a way. And what I mean by that is like, assume you sort of have this like product that anyone can sort of like sign up for and can get started with. You have some like baseline floor price that like everyone pays, right? Maybe it's $100 a month, right? And your TAM is massive. You have a huge total addressable market. Anybody can sign up and they can use your product. Your floor price is $100, and you have like it's almost like Costco, right?
Mm-hmm.
Everybody pays their Costco membership. Costco's TAM is huge. It's like every American, right? But you can go in and you can sort of like pay a la carte prices for specific products. You can kind of buy like the Costco alternative, right? It's like the maximum theoretical amount of spend at Costco is, I guess, like however much like salary savings and credit card limit you have.
Sure.
I think what's interesting for us and like the way we're thinking about Outbound is like if we're a multi-product company and like we have a floor price of our product that anybody else can sort of like anyone can sign up and use a product with, which will be the case in the future, and a very high maximum kind of like theoretical limit of what they could spend. The question for us becomes like not how do we get attention. It becomes like how do we like maximize conversion or like find the different like combination like SKU combinations like bundle combinations between like 50 theoretical future SKUs instead of like the 7 or 8 in the present day. So like Outbound seems like a really, really good channel, especially if you're able to personalize offers, you're able to speak to personas with this multi-product offering that anybody, again, can sort of like self-serve onto and activate on. That feels like a really, really good untapped kind of channel for us at scale.
Is that how you guys are? Is that guys how you guys are marketing now? What's your primary marketing strategy at this point?
Yeah, today I would say we're pretty. I want to say we're like probably 80% inbound led and going down as we're starting to ramp our own kind of outbound, which is right now is like sales led. Definitely, I mean we have BDRs doing outbound growth. Like cold calling and sequencing and all that good stuff, it's all like the low hanging fruit, right? It's all the stuff that today for our product and our go to market motion today is, that's what is going to enable us to grow. And like, that's what helps us collect data and to understand the levers that we can pull to grow our current business and our current product as it stands today.
So right? You say it's 80% inbound. So how are they,
might be a little bit less.
How are they finding you? What's the process for them? Is it like something like this where they just hear about it on a podcast?
Well, we've been hearing it a lot more lately. The podcast thing, which is definitely great for our inbound motion. But we produce a lot of content. I mean, I have a LinkedIn post that goes out pretty much every day, I think right now, and fully, we produce it internally and put it out there. But also, multiple people on our team also post, right? So we've got some secret sauce in terms of I guess how we approach that. But I think the biggest part is like, you want the right people in your market to see the right message, and you want them to see that message as often as possible. The result of that is like, people tell us a lot, like we see you guys like everywhere all the time. You're like all over my feed, etc. And that for us is exactly what we want, because the way I think about like the market, like a market and like the quality of a market relative to like the product or the service that a company offers is like the number of days where the problem or the pain that you've solved is felt. And then the intensity of the problem during the number of days in that calendar year where someone can actually act on it and make a purchasing decision on it, right? For us, like that's actually a very limited number of days in the year, right? 365 days in a year. For us, we're typically ripping and replacing other software. So we might have like a 30 to 60 day window where we have to go in and, we have to be top of mind, which is why we've taken this concept first approach. So
does AI assist with, like I've seen some other stuff where people are using Clay in combination with scraped lists in order to then highly target and specify sort of what you're delivering to that prospect? Are you using anything like that?
Yeah, we do some of that stuff. We use Clay a lot for not necessarily for like content or outbound, but generally for market definition. I'd say I think the classic like early stage thing for a startup is always like, you want to find product market fit. And then like the mistake you can make after finding product market fit is not like doubling, tripling, quadrupling down on where that product market fit is the strongest. And usually like changing the market piece like introduces a ton of risk into a company, right? Yeah. Ideally you're you create a ton of leverage for your business and your growth, like by investing in the product, not necessarily like changing your market, right? But it's very important to like understand, like be intentional about like the market piece of the equation, which is equally as important as the product.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt. I want you to say that again.
Yeah.
Did you say that the greatest leverage comes from improving the product and not changing the marketing strategy? Did I hear you right?
No, not necessarily that. But most businesses, probably 90% of software businesses, for example, they can't sell to everyone at every company, right? It's a certain like person that feels a specific problem and is empowered to make a decision on whether or not they allocate their budget to solve that problem with the given solution that they see at the right time. To do that. Right now, it's easier than ever to build software. So like you have to get more and more specific and way more intentional about like the market piece of that like product market fit equation. And that doesn't mean like changing your marketing strategy or evolving it, because I mean, we're doing that, right? Like the marketing, the actual like marketing piece of like iterating with messaging, iterating with positioning, etc. That's very, very important. I think like everyone needs to do that. You need to experiment and see what works, and like double, triple, quadruple down on what is working better than the thing that was working 6 months ago. The main thing I mean is like you should you get a lot of leverage in like understanding like the ideal customer for your business right now, right? Like for us, that is a very specific flavor of business. It's not it might not be today. It might not be a an oil refinery in Texas, right? It's going to be like a B2B software company that's raised at least a Series A or a Series B and has 2+ reps, uses Salesforce and a bunch of other stuff, right? So it's very, very specific, and I think you get a ton of leverage by like understanding like the profiles of people that you get and not like dramatically over rotating in or out of those profiles.
Well, let's talk about the inbound processes that you guys are using. Do you have a workflow or maybe an agent or something that you're using as leads are coming in? In order to sort of like process those? Can you show us something that you got going on?
Yeah, absolutely. Funny, I'll talk our own book here, of course. But a big part of our thesis was that the way you want to build a big company in this category is you want to bundle a bunch of like really fragmented or traditionally like disjoint data, right? A lot of that right now is in the marketing funnel. You've got like attribution data from like, clicks from all these ad platforms or from places like LinkedIn or Google Ads, or like content from a newsletter, et cetera, that tells, it's all the pieces of the marketing to revenue feedback loop of like all the money being spent, all the activities being produced, all the content being generated, and what's actually moving the needle, right? And it's never you never have a clever exact answer, right? But you can sort of detect trends and patterns over time. The other component of this is sales, right? Like being able to turn data that is sort of trapped or hidden in that marketing funnel and serving it up to sales or marketing for their respective work unit, right? Whether that be like a BDR reaching out to book a meeting, right? That is an assignment of work that a BDR has to do to go book a meeting, right? So what I'll show you real quick is one of the workflows that we use, of course, with Default, that helps us generate between 200 and 300K of pipeline every month, and uses some AI within it as well.
Is that extra revenue that you can quantify, or is that just this is the process that's helping you generate that revenue?
Yeah, this is a big part of the process that is helping us generate that revenue. So,
what application is this that you're working in, by the way?
This is Default.
Default. Oh, so this is your platform. Okay.
This is our platform. So we do run annoyingly so we run a lot of our own go-to-market stuff in our own product. I couldn't take this call. I couldn't have the self-respect to take the call with you if that weren't the case. So
right. I appreciate that.
Yeah, of course. But yeah, I'll tell you a little bit about what's happening here and how we actually use this. So we've got a little pixel that comes with Default out of the box that you put on your website, and it basically joins UTM parameters to form submissions. It tracks events across your website. and passes them into default with like conversions, with activity, et cetera, and joins them to like people, company opportunities, et cetera, in our platform, right?
How does it know who the company is that's hitting the website? How does it find that? Can you share that
Yeah,
tidbit? Okay.
yeah. So there's a really interesting component of default. It's very CDP-esque, right? One of the big challenges with like building a CDP is like identity resolution. One of the way we've sort of like soft hacked it is with waterfalling third-party website intent data. So when you put this
Okay.
picture on your website, you have the ability to opt into de-anonymizing or revealing into companies or people associated with different website sessions and whatnot within default. So what we do is we have our pixel on our website, and what it does in this workflow is it identifies the company that's on our website using several different website intent providers, checks it against Salesforce to see if this is a company that we've already engaged with, or is it have we accounted for this already in that market modeling piece?
Is that
Um,
similar to like Zoom Info or I guess
yeah,
HubSpot's got their own thing where they can show like intent based what have they been searching for and clicking on?
yeah,
Is that very similar to that?
yeah, definitely.
Okay.
I mean, the big secret of it is like we're all buying from the same like five companies. Yeah, at the end of the day, we're all buying from the
Nobody.
same
Here's
five
the thing.
companies.
Nobody wants to say it though, and I'm
I'll
just
do
like,
it. I'll
what?
do
It
it.
just everybody
Oh,
wants to pretend like
yeah.
it's proprietary, and
No,
I'm like, yeah,
no,
there's
it's
only
not.
like there's
That's
only like
yeah.
three providers that really are good at generating that data.
Yeah, it's like three guys in Texas that are all they're just making all the money here. So
That's right.
yeah. And this is kind of the big secret. The big not so secret, I guess, is like a lot of this data is commoditized, and that's actually a really really good thing for companies like Default and companies like Play that want to pass along the savings or the consumption, the cost of consuming that data to the customer.
Mhm.
Because I mean, 6 years ago, you had to spend a lot of money with one data provider usually to operationalize
Yep.
data, third
Yep.
party data within your go to market. You needed a really good RevOps team or a data team to like take this stuff and help you figure out how to do APM with it and stuff like that. Now, like this third party data is becoming too cheap to meter, which is incredible for
Yeah.
people building tools for companies. And it's better for go-to-market teams as well. I mean, you have more access to data than ever before.
Awesome.
So
I love it. Okay.
yeah.
Cool.
So essentially, what we're doing here is we're de-anonymizing a company, we're ref checking it against the CRM, doing a little bit of routing here. And my favorite piece of this workflow is us using our AI action step here. And essentially, we're using GPT-4o from OpenAI, and we've got a prompt here that says, this thing is a highly intelligent outbound SDR monitoring companies that are browsing the website. And essentially, what it's doing is it's qualifying it against a lot of the information that we know, right? So here
Mhm.
we've got like a lot of our ICP data. We're telling it, what it needs, so our BDR can act quickly, et cetera. And we're pulling in all this data, spitting it out with some really good first and third party context. So context from the CRM,
Mhm.
context from enrichment data, which actually does not happen on this branch, would happen on the other one. And then fetches any local data that Default already has, right? So if this company was already enriched by us, we just fetch that data
So
and
this is
push it
basically for
downstream.
your. This is just giving your sales rep a leg up, where it's just saying, "Hey, here's all the information that is
Yeah,
going to be pertinent for you, so you don't have to go dig it up yourself."
exactly,
That's
exactly.
brilliant. Yeah.
Yeah. And what he's able to do now, I'll use him as an example. We essentially now know that the management overhead of a BDR at Default is really really low. Essentially, what they have to do is they just have to sit on Slack, pretty much all day long and just wait for hot companies to show up, right?
Hmm.
And if there are hot companies that are, they show a lot of promise or they show a lot of potential of like potential like really good sales qualified opportunity, which we've got some like pretty I'd say some pretty disciplined filtering in place to make sure that we're not reaching out to companies that wouldn't be that
Yeah.
in place. I now know that I can go hire like N BDRs over the course of the next 6 months, and if this trend holds, produce X number of dollars worth of sales qualified opportunities, and as a result, X number
nice
of
because they're
X dollars
not.
of revenue.
Yeah, it's nice because they're not doing anything except highest value work inside the company.
Yeah,
And I think that's where, of all the people that I've talked to, the founders and owners, that's a real recurring theme. Is like,
yeah,
how do we not necessarily get by with less, but how do we just optimize the people who are doing the work so that they're operating at like not even maximum capacity or productivity, but just like they're getting the most out of the value that they hired that person to do.
yeah.
So I guess a follow-up question to that would be, how important is it that all of the data? So one of the big benefits I can see of building a solution like Default or using one like you've got is that all of the data is housed inside of one platform. And therefore, if you wanted to build AI workflows, agents, anything like that, you don't have to worry, like all the data is there in one place. You don't have to go fetch it from some third-party platform like a Google or something like that.
Yeah.
How important is that to what you guys are trying to build?
That's it's incredibly important. It's just that's our entire secret sauce, right? And the issue with AI, I think right now is like, yeah, at least in go to market, is it hasn't yet had a statistically significant impact on the metrics that like execs care about. I was reading this post from Thomas Tungas at Theory Ventures from a few months ago. They ran this like big AI and go to market survey in 2024. And the sort of like red pill that came out of it was that AI has had like very little impact on like conversion rates or growth rates. A big part of it being like the technology is so widespread and so easy to adopt now that anyone can do the same thing. It kind of goes back to the thing you were talking about at NA10, right? Like there's a new mean, and every maybe like every 6 to 12 months now, or even sooner actually, with how fast this stuff is being adopted. There's this new competitive edge that sort of emerges every few months, and the issue is like that competitive edge is there's no oligopoly around it, right? It's like it's anyone can buy it, anyone can adopt it, everyone is hungry to learn these new technologies and like get a lot of business leverage. The issue is like, if everyone has access to the same AI tools, then no one can really use AI to find their competitive edge, right? So our belief is that a lot of the competitive edge that you're going to get is going to come from the operational efficiency that you get. Not just like it's going to be less about like conversion and growth rates and a lot more around like managing headcount, right? And assigning work, knowing when to assign work, drawing the lines between work that gets assigned to humans and work that gets assigned to like agents or systems. Because, in a world like that, it gets way easier to actually measure the productivity of a human if 50% of the work is being assigned to an agent, like it is in our workflow, right? A good chunk of of that has been assigned to an agent. So yeah.
So what I want to drive home the point that you just made, because I think it's so important, is that you talk about there's a new mean, and one of the reasons I interview a lot of startup guys, I interview a lot of founders, but there are a ton of businesses out there right now that don't fall into that category and who are not starting to employ these. And it hits your industry first, right? Because everybody's excited to play with the new toys. There's another guy out there who works at a contracting company or some IT firm, and they're not maybe as interested in like playing with the new toys. They're still running with the old standard. Mm-hmm. And one of the reasons that I get so excited about doing this show is I think that if people aren't doing what you're talking about, if they're not implementing, if they're not testing, if they're not learning how these tools work and starting to implement them, even if it's not, let's say you can't get any alpha on the marketing side, right? But you can get it on the operational side. Mm-hmm. And the difference is that if you're not working on that now, you're going to get destroyed by the people who are, because you're not going to be able to compete and thrive in the new economy where agents are handling 50%, 60%, 80% of the drudgery work inside the company and doing it faster than anybody ever thought possible. So I think what you said is very valid, and I think that if you're listening to the show today and you're like, hey, I've kind of had an interest in this, but I don't really know where to get started, man, just do something. Go and watch a thing on ChatGPT. One of the things I love about YouTube is it's just loaded with people who are testing stuff out. That's the other cool thing. I was talking with somebody yesterday about this, and the level of free information on how to build this stuff is incredible. I've never seen so many people just freely giving away entire workflows, entire processes, teaching you how to, implement them into your own system or modify them for your own use case. I just think that, man, we're at this great little point in history where we're going to hit a point where there was a time before and a time after, kind of like the internet.
Absolutely.
And I don't think that point in time happened when the internet was created, or even maybe in like 1990. But man, by 2000, you've got everything before the internet and everything after. And we're coming up on that line where there's a time before AI and everything after, and nothing will be the same again.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. It's fascinating.
What gets you most excited about AI improvements in the future? What are you hoping to see?
Yeah, I like to think that we've been pretty pragmatic with how we've talked about it, how we've built it into our product, et cetera. We're not believers that, we don't believe that, AI is going to solve kind of like all the problems imaginable, at least for a lot of businesses. I think if you've tried to not only like implement AI at a company, but you've tried to make it work for various problems and whatnot, we're not quite there yet. And despite the technology being really, really good, I think a lot of the bottleneck and a lot of the reason behind that is just it's not being deployed correctly. I think there's a lot.
Expand on that. What do you mean by that?
Yeah. Well, I think one of the biggest reasons why companies and businesses operate very inefficiently is because of information sprawl, information and context sprawl, right? And if you've got in a world where a lot of context, a lot of, where like product managers are, generating their PRDs with ChatGPT, and another PM is generating their PRD with Claude, right? And so on and so forth. Like there's this like very real threat to efficiency. I mean, there's like the marginal, like kind of like low hanging fruit productivity gains you get from like a human not having to write the PRD anymore, which is great. And maybe PRDs are not actually a good example. I think meeting recorders might be a really good example, right? Like the meeting recording infrastructure, like the stuff you need to build like a meeting recording bot is commoditized now. You can go buy like recall.ai and you can build one and like put it into your product. You can build one internally for your company. Mm-hmm. We think a lot about like the winning companies that come out of this and like the companies that sort of like struggle a little bit. And the theme that we're starting to like really center on is that the companies that win are going to have these like very autocratic kind of AI adoption and like information architecture design decisions that get made. If you've got like 1,000 employees and like 20 different meeting recording solutions, there's so much new information that gets created and stored, but it's in like 20 different tools, right? So it's more important than ever to be able to architect your IT stack, for example. It's like all of the software that you build in a way that's very easily queryable. It's very easy to report on, and so on and so forth. I think if you're taking that approach of being very, very top down with your software adoption at that scale, and being pretty controlled with how things get adopted, how information gets stored, how it's queried, how it's reported on, et cetera, that's a huge competitive advantage. But there's definitely a big risk to even more information sprawl, as like more information gets sort of like stored and kind of gets stuck in these like, user preference, user preference respecting kind of like LLM tools
in the vortex somewhere.
Exactly.
Not accessible. Yeah, no, I get it.
Exactly.
No, I think you're spot on with that. I think that I think more and more more and more companies are going to have to go to some sort of all-in-one solution. Like you said, even if it's just for meeting notes. I know that Motion has, not a plug for Motion. Well, it is kind of a plug for Motion, but one of the things that they do with their meeting notes is you can automatically assign it, after it comes out to people who are in the company who are on the meeting, and it kind of knows who to send it to. And it's just, that goes to the point that information isn't lost, and it's usable, it's actionable after the meetings are over inside of the company. So I love it, man. Where do people find you? Is it just default.com?
Yeah, default.com is where you can find out more about the company, the product, the business, etc. I'm also on LinkedIn, probably more often than I should be these days, but I'm all over LinkedIn, and easily reachable there, or Twitter as well, which is my preferred method of communication these days as well.
Twitter is the preferred method, huh?
X.com, the everything app. Yeah.
All right. Right on. Well, dude, thank you so much for being on the show. Thanks for sharing your knowledge, your wisdom, and I appreciate it. It was a really great conversation.
Yeah, likewise. Thanks a ton, Jason.
And all right, that's our show, guys. Listen, if anything that we talked about today got you excited about implementing AI into your business, but you are not super tech savvy and you want a really easy, friction-free experience, and to see how you can start deploying things like AI agents and meeting notes and project management all under one roof, then I want you to check out Motion. It is an incredible platform that encompasses all of the things that I just talked about. That's going to save you a massive amount of time. It's going to allow everybody on your team to get more productive. And so go and check them out. Link in the description where you can get a free trial to check it out for yourself. So go do that now. And as always, please like and subscribe if you love the show. I love that. And if we grow this thing up, there's a good chance I'm going to get to keep doing it, which I really love doing. So do me a big solid there. And other than that, thank you so very much. We'll see you in the next episode.